After being fired from their university research positions at NYU, a group of 3 PhDs embark on a new entrepreneurial adventure to capture ghosts that are taking over New York City. I don't really have a recollection of the first time I saw Ghostbusters. I was only 2 years old when it came out, and I was just 4 when the cartoon version and the toy line came out. I imagine I first got sucked into the cartoon, and then the toys, and eventually saw the movie. This is definitely the first time that a marketing campaign for something took over my life. Even 40 years later, and I still watch all the Ghostbusters films. I revisit the cartoons, I read books about the making of the movies, I watch videos on the making of the movies, and I even have made my family dress up as Ghostbusters character for Halloween a few years ago and put together a short Halloween video of us in costume. Ghostbusters is without a doubt one of my favorite movie franchises of all time. My earliest memory of Ghostbusters is my maternal grandfather telling my mom that he recorded the movie off of HBO. And I remember looking at my mom, and she was trying to secretly tell my grandfather not to bring up Ghostbusters around me, or that's all we would be doing and talking about all weekend long. I watched the movie with him multiple times, and he even bought me the Ghostbusters computer game for his Apple computer. Now, after the cartoon went off the air and I saw the second film in the theater in 1989, I moved on to other things until 1999. My grandfather had passed away, and all of his old VHS tapes ended up at our house. I found the tape that had Ghostbusters on it, and I popped it in. The video quality was awful. The tape had degraded so much over that 15 years since he'd recorded it, but it immediately brought back this nostalgia for the movie. Maybe the first time that I ever experienced true nostalgia. My birthday was coming up, and I asked my aunt to buy me the 15th anniversary DVD release of Ghostbusters. The next year I moved in with my aunt to attend college as she lived close to campus, and almost every evening while I would sit and do my homework in her basement, I would have Ghostbusters on in the background. And each time I go to New York City, I have to visit some of the landmarks from the movie. I never get tired of going to the firehouse and seeing that it is still decked out in Ghostbusters iconography. And while I focus on spoiler-free reviews, I will be talking in a little bit more detail about this movie for its 40th anniversary. Still no major spoilers though, and plus, this isn't really the kind of movie that can be spoiled. The journey of watching it is great even if you know what's coming. So as a kid, I felt so brave watching Ghostbusters' first encounter with a ghost, sweet librarian who got a little angry when people weren't quiet. The image of that ghost, as well as Large Marge from Pee-wee's Big Adventure, are just seared into my memory. I was way too young the first time I experienced both of them. Now in the cartoon, the character of Ray was my favorite character, so naturally Ray became my favorite character in the movie as well. He's portrayed by Dan Aykroyd, who also co-wrote the film. He is the heart of the Ghostbusters, and he brings so much natural and real enthusiasm and excitement to his character. It's clear from the start that Ray is not good with money. He agrees to get a third mortgage on his home to be able to start the Ghostbusters business, and then he spends $4,800 on a broken down car when a new car probably cost about $6,000 at the time. But I love Ray explaining when he found the car. Everybody can relax, I found the car. Need some suspension work and shocks, brakes, brake pads, linings, steering box, transmission, rear end. Only $4,800 though, maybe some new rings, also mufflers and a little wiring. And then of course we got Peter. As I got older, Peter became my favorite character, and I think he's probably the favorite character of most people. Bill Murray, as always, just kind of plays himself, but himself is a little bit quirky and unique and full of dry humor and wit, so it usually works out well. As a small child, most of the humor of Peter went over my head, but once I was old enough to get the jokes, I found him absolutely hilarious. Peter was the playful Ghostbuster who never took things too seriously, but he still had PhDs in psychology and parapsychology, so he clearly was smart. And watching the movie 40 years later, maybe he's a bit too creepy for modern audiences. He treats his female student subject much differently than her male counterpart, and when the Ghostbusters get their first job with a young single woman named Dana, played by Sigourney Weaver, Peter jumps at the chance to help her and immediately makes inappropriate jokes. When Peter visits her apartment, he tries to go into her bedroom with his ghost reading device, and she says, "That's the bedroom, nothing ever happened in there," and he replies, "What a crime." Now later in the movie, Peter comes to Dana's house for a date, and she isn't really herself, and he is forced to give her some sleeping pills or tranquilizer. But my question is, why did he show up at her apartment with sleeping pills and tranquilizers? Now in the context of the movie, it was needed and there was nothing sinister going on, but the question remains, does he just carry around tranquilizers with him all the time? After watching the movie even more, my favorite character changed again, this time to Egon, played by Harold Ramis, who co-wrote the movie along with Dan Aykroyd. Now if Ray is the heart and Peter is the comic relief, Egon is the brains of the operation, and that's saying something considering Peter has 2 PhDs. Egon invents the proton packs used to capture the ghost, as well as sets the traps, and the containment unit that keeps the ghost from getting loose. Essentially, the Ghostbusters are nothing more than exterminators. They just happen to be exterminating ghosts. Egon doesn't really joke. He's all business and science all the time, but that doesn't stop him from being absolutely hysterical. In one scene, he's talking to Janine, the Ghostbusters secretary, played by Annie Potts, who is flirting and trying to find common ground when she asked him if he reads. And he says, "Print is dead." And then when she asked him if he has any hobbies, without hesitation, he says, "I collect spores, molds, and fungus." Janine is great. She speaks in this thick New York accent and doesn't take BS from anyone. She's good at her job. We don't learn a whole lot about her, though. In the second film, she has a much bigger role, but her character was redesigned to be more like Janine from the cartoon, and it just didn't feel as natural to me. The fourth Ghostbuster, Winston, doesn't show up for quite a while, and he is there to represent the audience, the everyman. He doesn't have a PhD, he just wants a job with a paycheck. He's willing to do just about anything. He grounds the other three guys and is a welcome addition to the team. He never really got his full character arc that he deserved, but I can't imagine the Ghostbusters without him. Over the years, almost every character in Ghostbusters has been my favorite at some point or another. In 2024, my favorite character hands down is Louis Tully, portrayed by Rick Moranis. He lives across the hall from Sigourney Weaver's Dana Barrett, and he has a huge crush on her. She is an accomplished symphony musician, and he's an uber nerdy accountant. He is so intense but sweet, almost like a golden retriever puppy. He is always right there when Dana comes or goes from her apartment and will do just about anything to try to win her affection. But what makes the character so great is that in every scene, he has dialogue that just absolutely floors me. He throws a party for all of his clients, and during that party, his mouth never stops moving. Couple of my favorite Lewis quotes. "I think all I got is a salicylic acid. Generic. See, I can get 600 tablets of that for the same price as 300 of the name brand. That makes good financial sense. It's good advice." And then this one, which I've always wanted to memorize and I've never been able to do it. "Gozer the Traveler. He will come in one of the pre-chosen forms. During the rectification of the Voldrani, the Traveler came as a large and moving Torg. Then during the third reconciliation of the last of the McKintrick supplicants, they chose a new form for him, that of a giant slore. Many shoves and zools knew what it was to be roasted in the depths of the slore that day, I can tell you." Complete nonsense, but amazing. Each character plays off of each other so well, and they all get all-time classic comedy lines. But it isn't just those characters. The villains are all classic as well. Whether we're talking about the iconic Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, Zool, Slimer, the Demon Dogs, or even Walter Peck, the EPA agent. It's hard to believe so many characters, so much action, so many special effects, and so many classic scenes all happen in an hour and 45 minutes. There was nothing like Ghostbusters when it came out. It was hilarious, full of comic icons from the 80s, but it was also cutting edge and had amazing special effects. It even won an Academy Award for those ghost effects. For kids, the movie can be a bit scary, as some of the ghosts are pretty terrifying, but it blends the humor and horror and action very well. Film studios today aren't willing to take a chance on new intellectual property. They always want a sequel or a reboot. Back in 1984, I guess having Saturday Night Live alumni and comedy director Ivan Reitman was enough to get the green light. Every few years, I rediscover Ghostbusters, and each time I do, I find something new to love about it. Now, while this is a small thing, and the most recent time I watched it on the 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray, I laughed so hard at Slimer, easily the most iconic ghost in the film, as he is flying around this chandelier. I had never noticed how slack-jawed that puppet was. Every time I hear the score from the movie or the sound of the proton packs turning on, I get a twinge of nostalgia. Same goes anytime I hear any song from the movie. Ray Parker's Ghostbusters song has reached icon status and is a staple of literally everyone's Halloween playlist. And while I have enjoyed all 5 Ghostbusters movies, nothing will ever top the original. Sure, it's mostly nostalgia at this point, but the movie is a classic for a reason. It's 40 years old, but the jokes still work, the cast still clicks, and even though the groundbreaking special effects do not totally hold up today, they're still charming. Literally everything in Ghostbusters works. The cast, the score, the sets, the songs, the story, the pacing, the ghosts, the humor, the action, the horror. In my opinion, this is one of a very few perfect movies. Barely holding onto your cigarette, floating above the bed, 4 feet above the bed, red eyes, riding an elevator with a nuclear accelerator strapped to your back, symmetrical book stacking.